Hello, fine folks, and welcome to Booghy Plays. Today I'm not playing. I am I'm playing with questions, as I always say. Today I'm interviewing someone from the industry, as you already saw, Mr. Happy Squid himself. That's his name on BGG. Um, or yeah, and also the designer of one of my favorite card games, which is right there behind my back, um, Elysium. Also, the designer of Chocolate Factory or Monumental. Today, I am very happy to welcome to Booghy Plays Matthew Dunstan. Welcome,
Thank you.
Matthew.
Thank you, Booghy. Thanks for having me. That's a very kind introduction.
How are you? You feel good?
I do. I feel it's a nice summer afternoon, not too hot, not too cold, very comfortable.
Yeah, also here, also in Romania, is quite nice for a July day. Uh,
Yeah.
Not a hot day, so it's nice. So, like I usually do, I start the interview with. We have two parts. First is the interview part, and then we're gonna have a questionnaire at the end. So I start with, without further ado, the first part is a bit about who Matthew Dunstan is. So, sir, where were you born and where did you grow up?
I was born in Sydney in Australia, and I lived there for a little bit. But when I was quite young, we moved to a small country town about 4 hours from Sydney. Had a population of about 12,000 people, and so that's sort of I grew up in the bush, as we say in Australia, in the countryside in rural Australia. And it was yeah, it was really nice. It was a nice place to grow up, sort of very different pace of life, I guess.
Um, how did growing up there shaped you as a child or and later as a person?
It's a broad question. I think
What influence did it had on you? Growing up there.
it let me try a lot of things actually. When I look back at at my school, for example, in high school, we only had, I don't know, 20 or 30 people in the class. So it meant that every sporting team had to call on everybody almost to, I even played football, and I don't play football, really, but I got to play it at school. So, I mean, that's with sport, but also with sort of cultural events. I played instruments, I was in plays. I think you got to do a lot of things, and you didn't, uh, yeah, you just got to try a lot of things, and you weren't worried about how good you were. It's just everybody kind of, you could give it a go. And so I think that probably meant that I got a lot of interesting experiences, but I had some confidence to try something new if it didn't immediately come to me in an easy way, I guess. And the other thing is, I think you feel like you have a lot of time. Things just move a little bit more slowly. You yourself are probably a little bit more patient, I guess. Like when you are used to traveling for a really long time, it would take us 4 hours on a train to get to Sydney, and we'd go to Sydney reasonably often. So you get used to just sitting on a train for 4 hours, and it's fine. So I think I'm pretty content with my own company. I'm pretty patient, and probably that helped, I'd imagine.
Uh, Hello, Zuldberg for president. I will say this: if you have questions, everybody who has questions can write them there. We're going to respond to them at the end of the interview. So, um, did you start while you were there? Did you play in school? You said you played football. Did you play sports? Did you start playing games while you were a child?
Yeah, I probably played more sport. I mean, in Australia is also quite well known for just, I think it's a highly, per capita, a lot of people play sport. But we played games in our household from quite early, actually. From my family, I remember playing traditional card games with my grandmother, things like euchre. And in Australia, we have a variant of sort of euchre and bridge called 500, which is very popular as a four-player traditional card game, and you would play it in a lot of different contexts. And I played chess from quite young age, so I had that kind of background in kind of traditional games, and that was a normal part of our growing up. And I did get to play a few of the kind of more modern, European style games, Settlers of Catan and Carcassonne, during my sort of high school years. But it probably wasn't until I moved to Sydney for university that I was immersed more in the kind of modern board gaming hobby, I would say.
I see. So when did you start? When did you discover board games?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I think I had some, early on, I knew about Settlers of Catan. I knew that there were other games, but probably when I got to university, when I was 18 or 19, I went along to some of these, board game clubs, and they had lots of games that I had never seen and I hadn't played. So, yeah, I can. It's funny we were talking a bit before the show that you like Vidal Lacerda, for example. I have a very vivid memory of playing Vinos, whenever that was, like the original version.
2010 or 2011, I think.
Yeah, yeah, and like during my kind of university time, and taking a long time and kind of melting my brain, but it but it was a good, yeah, it was that first sort of look at games, but also at the like very wide range of people who play them, because growing up in a small town, you didn't meet that wide range or diverse range of people, and that was also what going to university in a bigger city, you started to meet all the different types of people who liked enjoying playing games as well, which is kind of important.
What did you study at university?
I studied science, so I ended up majoring in chemistry, and then I went to the UK, moved to the UK in 2011 to do a PhD in chemistry as well at Cambridge. So that's kind of probably when things, about the time I moved was probably when I started thinking about designing. I'd done a little bit of dabbling in Sydney before I left. At the time in 2010, 2011, there wasn't much of a design scene in Australia. There were a few designers.
Let's not jump. Let's not
Oh,
jump.
okay. I'm going too far. Okay, sorry. I
Let's
you
not.
need some like stop sign or something.
Yeah, no, I was wondering because looking a bit into your background, practically you went to the science part of not the human. I don't know how is it called in English. You have the
The humanities.
humanities, yeah,
Yeah.
and the science. You went for the sciences. Usually, a lot of board gamers are into science, are part of the science community one way or the other. What kind of you discovered board games? What kind of a player are you? Were you when you started playing, and what kind of a player are you today?
Good question. I mean, the thing I kind of missed in that thing about talking about introduction to games was that I was also a big Magic the Gathering player since I was, I don't know, probably 9 or 10. That was probably the other thing that we couldn't get them in the town that I lived in. But when we went on holidays to a slightly bigger town, I'd see a game shop and we could buy like 1 or 2 decks that I'd play with my brother. And I actually had a cousin who unfortunately passed away, but he did play Magic, and it sort of also came through him. But so I had that. That was actually really like one of the other really main influences, probably a bigger influence than hobby games earlier in my life. And so I think that has been the biggest influence in terms of the type of player I am. I enjoy, I call them kind of special power card games, combo games, where you have lots of different parts and you're trying to fit them together in different ways, but probably that combine that kind of idea with systems which are quite streamlined, with sort of small footprints. You can have a very complex combinatoric game with hundreds of pieces, but I was sort of always interested, especially with card games, about the complexity that you can achieve just through a deck of cards. And so games, in favorites even then, and still favorites now, games like Race for the Galaxy and Innovation by Tom Lehman and Carl Chudik, respectively, are sort of for me are kind of representative of probably the type of game I like most to play and sort of gravitate to, and I guess is a little bit of the way way I play games, I guess. Looking how to put things together, I guess.
So practically playing card games with your grandmother took you to took you to Magic.
Yeah. I mean, it was in a way, it was quite a kind of sad thing in that actually the cousin who was only a few years older than me, unfortunately died quite young. He had cancer, but I inherited a few of his cards, and his mother took me to the shop she used to take him to, and so even though we never played together because just as it happened, there was that kind of like influence, which definitely I wouldn't necessarily have been exposed to because in this country town we just didn't really have kind of access to that, and certainly not a lot of people who played it necessarily.
And today, what kind of a player you are? What games do you prefer?
I mean,
Lighter.
I think I still like these like I still really like Race to the Galaxy and Innovation games like that. I probably generally play lighter things, but that's more of I guess just a practicality more than anything. I describe myself as kind of an omni gamer, if I guess that's a bit of a term.
Like the bear.
I'd like to play everything sort of once. I think. I think that also. I mean, it's hard to ignore the fact that I'm also a designer. Now as a full-time job. So playing games, takes on something from that designing sphere as well. And so I think I'm just curious to try lots of things because that informs not only what it is like to play, but also how to design. And I just want to see what's going on, basically. But I do like actually quite more recently, I guess, from the heavier style of game, I like the kind of Italian school of design, I guess, Simonio Luciani games. Games like Grand Austria Hotel, Lorenzo Magnifico, which also have lots of cards in them, which have, that's the kind of, I like that kind of variability you get from big decks of cards. Wingspan to a certain degree. I mean, I don't play it so much for other reasons, but games along that ilk. I tried Ark Nova. I was a bit disappointed, sadly. I was really hoping that was going to be like the next thing for me that I'd really love, but wasn't quite there. But yeah, along that kind of line, I guess.
I see. And well, you played, you became you became hooked.
Yeah, I guess I did.
And at some point, the light bulb went on and said, I would like to design. When did you start transitioning from a board gamer to a board game designer?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I think I've always been someone who likes sort of tinkering with how something's made or kind of looking behind the curtain. So in sport, for example, I often was a referee in a lot of things. So I was an accredited referee for field hockey and for touch football, and I was a tennis umpire at the Australian Open. And so I always, I was a player first, and then I kind of wanted to do something a bit more. And I think it was the same with board games. I played them, and then I wanted to kind of see what's behind that. And
so, you were an umpire at Australian Open?
A lines person, so calling lines. Yeah. So yeah. So I did that, and I even before that I was a ball person, like the people who pick up the balls.
Yeah. You I think these are the most I wouldn't say hated, but usually they take the most flack out of players from players, no?
Yeah, I definitely can remember some interest. I mean, thankfully I didn't have anything too fractious, and I think I also didn't do it. I think they were just bringing in Hawkeye, so like the technology where you can challenge the calls. That maybe was only just happening. I think now it's I guess it's both easier and harder. I think you kind of get shown up much more publicly, but at the same time, maybe there's less feeling of games, being affected too much by the umpires. You can always challenge it.
Yeah, by your decision. Yeah, your decision doesn't ruin someone's game between between codes.
I guess so.
Yeah. So now I find it interesting that you are a lines referee. Yeah, and you were starting to talk a bit about going to university and starting to think of designing.
Yeah,
How did the process start? How that process start?
I mean, if I could really remember, I think honestly, it was just pretty natural. I think I had played some games and I thought, I would like to. I mean, you said something about the people in sort of the sciences tend to go into board games. It's something about that kind of mechanical. You want to see how it works, basically. I think
Yeah,
natural
yeah,
scientists, they see the world, they want to know how it works.
yeah.
So, and for me, the best way to learn how it works was just to try. And I think even then there were enough kind of things you could read online, or you could get a bit of here and there. There were a few interviews, and you could just sort of start. I think I can't. The first few games I made were not particularly good,
It
and
happens.
there also wasn't much of a community. I think that was the other thing that was, as in Australia at the time. Yeah, there were a few big designers like Phil Walker Harding, for example, had made a few of his own games. I don't think Sushi Go had come out yet, for example, but he'd been self-publishing some things. So there wasn't really like now it's a little bit different in a lot of places in the world where if you think, oh, I'm interested in designing, yes, you can look online, but often you can find other people who live maybe in the same city or in the same country who are also interested in designing, and you can get some kind of first-hand, introduction into the process or that sort of thing. But yeah, we just had some limited. I tried to set up a meetup with a few folk who would come around and who were all kind of beginning like myself, but I actually left Australia quite soon after that, so I sort of didn't really see what would have come of that. And so I think those first efforts were pretty. I'm sure, like everybody's, they were just pretty bad,
Yeah, probably.
Nothing really came of it, but
What year
I
was
must have
this?
been interested enough that I
Sorry,
kept going.
sorry to interrupt you. What year was this? I'm
This
curious.
is 2011.
2011. Oh, so you've been at it for 11 years now. Maths.
Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty much. Yeah, yeah. The the game that went on to be my first published game, Relic Runners, was started in 2011, the later part of 2011. So.
Okay. So you started um, chipping at it, trying to understand it, trying to see how it goes, to see how it works. When did you try to take it seriously? I mean, I want to do this. I want to be a game designer, not just oh maybe I want to be a game designer. When you said okay, I want to do this, I really want to do this.
I mean, I don't think it was ever I mean, I think there's a difference between saying I want to be a game designer and I want to design a game. I don't think I thought of it as sort of my identity. I think it was, it was not an activity, but it was kind of a goal to finish a game, to make something that would be playable. And I think the thing that helped me with that, or at least made me realize it was possible and probably gave me like the kind of the way forward, because obviously there's lots of different parts of that process that you kind of have to learn or stumble through yourself, was when I moved to the UK in mid 2011. I met Brett Gilbert, who had at the time just had his first game signed that would become Divinare with Asmodee. He lived, and he happened to live in Cambridge, and I was moving to Cambridge, and I had
To do the PhD, in order to do
yes,
the
and
PhD.
I had sort of what's the word? I had stalked him online. He had a blog in those days, which I really enjoyed reading, and it was kind of during a time where there wasn't a lot being written about design, so there wasn't, it was kind of it really stood out, I think, and it still would. And yeah, we somehow made the contact, and then could start meeting up once a week in Cambridge as the two of us. And I think Brett had already like a little bit more experience in Europe. There's a little bit more of a tradition of, say, design competitions, some very old ones in Italy, in France, in Germany, that you can enter, if you're an amateur designer. And I think you get a lot of like feedback, and it kind of helps you with the sort of understanding how it works. And so he had a little bit of that knowledge. And I think being in that kind of group with him, that was when I probably kind of saw the way forward, that I saw how I could finish a game. And if I did finish a game, how I might be able to show it to a publisher and possibly get it published. So I'd say that was really the catalyst, moving to the UK and meeting Brett and being able to, that kind of personal connection. Because I think ultimately the interesting thing about being a board game designer is it's not a solitary pursuit. I mean, a lot of it kind of is a solitary pursuit, but you're so reliant on other people, both in terms of just people who are happy to playtest your game, but I think also in that kind of design community and and talking about what's going on and experiencing things together is so important.
It looks like a collaborative process, not
Absolutely, absolutely. Or at least that's the way I see it. I know there are some designers who are very singular in a way, like they have their ideas and they work by themselves, and of course they do playtest with people, but they have a kind of a strong control over that process. But I think I probably took something from my experience as a scientist, or at least how I like to work as a scientist, was in a very collaborative sense. It was knowing that you're probably good at something, but you're not good at everything. So you may as well work with other people who, can complement your strengths, and you'll make something better that way.
Oh, I see. Um, I have a question for you.
It's good.
Um, what is fun to you?
Whew. That's a good question.
Fun is different for different people.
Yeah, no, of course, of course.
Means different
I
for
think
different people.
I think something is just that takes you out of like the kind of ordinary. You kind of escape the kind of ordinary experience of living. It you kind of forget the time. I guess is the best, like the most practical way of thinking about it. Where you are so involved in something. And I know for me, obviously, that I think there's a connection to being, like mentally kind of it's stimulating, being a puzzle or a problem to kind of solve. But you become so absorbed in that, for me that's just fun, and you kind of lose, you lose track of time. You're kind of like focused on that thing, and it's just very engaging. I think for me that's what is fun for me. Right, at least with games.
You're in a different um, time zone, in a different.
Yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily about like entering some different world or about, I don't have to feel like I don't know, like running a railway company. I'm not a particularly thematic gamer, for example. I don't really care too much about the themes of the games I play. Not too much anyway. But for me, it's the kind of mental process that's the thing that takes me out of the normal. I mean, related to this, I very much enjoy sort of logical numerical puzzles. Like Sudoku is one example, but there's a much broader family of things and I get the same kind of enjoyment from doing those. And of course, they're solitary puzzles; they're not games. So, but they scratch that same itch of kind of like attentive, engaged puzzle solving, problem solving, that kind of thing.
So. Your first published game was Relic Runners, no?
Yes.
How was that feeling of to see your first game published?
I mean, it's a pretty, yeah. I mean, in some ways, it's kind of indescribable. It's a pity that you don't know. What can I say? Like you don't enjoy it. I mean, I enjoyed it at the time, but you don't kind of recognize how special a moment it is until a bit later, I think. And I think that moment, the first time you hold something physical that was made by someone else, that was kind of produced outside of your kind of immediate realm of influence, and you hold it and it has your name on it. I mean, that's a very special kind of, and board games are kind of nice in that they are physical objects, so you can kind of hold it and you can open the box and you can like marvel over every little bit of the production, and you can look at the rule book, and that just kind of very tactile experience was very enjoyable and very special. I think that why I say that it's sort of, you don't realize how good it was until later. I mean, especially for me, Relic Runners was published by Days of Wonder.
Yeah.
And I probably didn't know it at the time. I knew they were a good publisher, but I mean they are one of the best
publishers ever. Yeah.
And both in terms of the how they develop the games, the product design, how they make it look, and also just how they treat designers and work with them and support them, and again, it's a very collaborative thing. They bring their own experience to the table to make something better, but they do it in a very cooperative way. It's not about imposing their will over a designer and saying it has to be like this. It's about, no, we have some ideas, but we want to talk with you, and we want all to be kind of proud of what we're making together. And I'm not saying, I think most publishers have that goal, there's nobody that's like completely, I don't know, malicious or something, but or not many, thankfully. But they just, it's just a different level with Days of Wonder. And I think I was, I only appreciated that kind of after the fact, because your first experience, I think, is going to be special no matter who you're published by. And I
Well,
was just very, very fortunate that I had that first experience that was just so positive, and which probably also gave me a lot of kind of confidence and happiness to keep going. Because there are other folks who have a horrible first experience.
yep.
You know,
And I know
and
some of those, and I know some of
yeah,
which
and it
are
can completely
horrible.
turn you off. So, and it's kind of by chance. It kind of, when you're trying to sell your first game, you don't know so much about different publishers. You don't, you're just happy if anybody wanted to publish it. And so it's a little bit like getting supervisors for your PhD. They have such a huge influence
Yep.
over how that's going to work, but you don't know that until you do it, right? So,
Yep. That's
yeah,
right.
I was
That's
just
right.
very fortunate.
Yep. Um, how how do you go about design? Do you go theme first, mechanisms, or mechanisms, and then we paste on a theme?
It's a bit of a loaded question there. Uh, I mean, I said already, I'm not a particularly thematic person, but I think more and more now, I guess I say it's kind of experience led. Like I kind of think about what do I want the players to experience, or what do this audience that I might be interested in playing this game, what would they like in the game? And sometimes that is a thematic thing, or I guess like a setting or like a vibe. Right now I think there's a great hunger for games which are, I call them like detailed realistic. It's not a very good term, but I think people like themes that are familiar, that are real, but at the same time have a little bit of extra detail that they might not know, that they're kind of curious about. I think that's something about, for example, Wingspan, in that, yes, okay, we all know birds exist and etc. But they're familiar to us, so we're drawn in because it's something we know. But then we have this opportunity to be sort of slightly surprised, or to learn something, not necessarily in an educational sense, but there's a curiosity there that can be kind of sated in the game. And I think there is a hunger for games like that, because I think, well, at least I think there's not as many games being made in that space. So, for example, if I was thinking for that audience, those are the kind of things I'm thinking about when starting with a game. But sometimes it's very mechanical, especially for the much simpler games. It's like um, what is the thing that people are going to feel when they play this kind of, what does this mechanism kind of evoke? What does it suggest? Is it, if it's kind of a backstabbing game, it feels like, it could be a short kind of party experience. Well, how do the mechanisms kind of support that? So I think I see it as a kind of more holistic thing, and I think you kind of have to, because if you are trying to be a professional designer, with time, and I'm not saying you should start designing like this. I don't think it's a very useful way to start designing, but you kind of realize, like, if you're going to make something a product, you have to kind of think about it from a lot of different aspects, or think about it as that whole product, what it can do.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. That's a that's a good thing. You have to think of a lot of things, because you put a product which reaches different levels of a human being, and you would have to think of all those levels. If you have an audience, if you think of an audience, if you think of your players as an audience, and I say that board games are a sort of a art form. If you think it that way, then you should think of your players as audience, or as audiences.
Well, of course, the difference is some designers will make games that they want to play, and I do that sometimes as well. And that, I think, I don't think there's any one right way, and I guess that's more of a, you could think of that even as a more auteur kind of way of thinking about things, is that I want to make the art that I want to see in the world,
Yep.
and that's not necessarily focused on an audience. Like, you're kind of that audience, and you're hoping that there'll be enough people who come along with you, or you don't really care about the size of the audience. You just hope that there'll be some people out there. And I think that's the beauty about board games, is that they can exist in both spheres. You can think about, there are games that you want to reach lots of people with one game, but there are also great games which are really just perfect for a small handful of folks around the world. It's great you can make both, I think.
I think in the end you can't really 100% know.
No, of course not. Well, if somebody knew, then if publishers knew, then they would just do it every time, right?
Yeah.
It's so complex, like how humans interact, not only with like a game, but also with each other. which is such an important part of games as well. It's not a solitary experience. It's not, it's not the viewer and the medium. It's the viewers and the other viewers, and sometimes the medium is actually speaking back to you. It's reacting to you in a way that
Yeah.
not other things do necessarily.
Yep. Exactly. And yeah, you just can't know. I think there were games which probably some publishers would have said that would never make money and made a lot of money, and there were games which they thought they're gonna be a huge success, and they were either a flop or not a very successful game. You don't know.
Yeah.
You do not
No,
know,
and
and
you
that's
don't
the
want to
beauty
know.
of it. It's like
Yeah,
art.
if you knew, then we would just be, we'd just be churning them off like a factory, and they're just that have no soul, and I also say this as well. Like I think sales, it's also different. I think designers, you have to think about why you want to design games. It doesn't have to be to sell lots of copies of your game. Again, you can make something, again, almost like art, which is just in existing can have value. So
Exactly.
it's not.
Yep.
You don't have to think about making lots of money or selling lots or being popular in the kind of commercial sense.
Yep. Well, I think we have Tony Boydell here. Hello, Tony, and I am I am how should I say, in a bit humbled. Welcome to my little channel here in. Um, um, so he says that it's like it's like in the film industry, nobody knows anything. That's right. I am a film director, and I that's why I make this parallel with film or books and board games. Board games are a form of art, and I think they will be um, recognized as such in our lifetime at some point. Now,
Yeah.
I have a question to you. What is your most played game?
Do you mean of ones I've designed, or you
No,
mean
no,
ones I
the
own?
one you have played the most outside of your.
I see. Probably, and tabletop games, I'm guessing. Would be either something like Point Salad or Fantasy Realms. I mean, that's a little bit to do with their games that I uh, I have the most chance to play with my partner basically, and we try and play a game each day, usually over breakfast. So it's sort of they have to be games that are good for two players
And fast.
and yeah, exactly. You can play in sort of 10 to 15 minutes. So games like that. We've played a lot of Lost Cities recently, for example, as well.
Yeah,
Um,
that's the
so
definitive couples game.
yeah, but I guess why something like Point Salad and Fantasy Realms, it still scratches that itch for kind of like powers and combos, and there's that kind of variety. I mean, I say variety and slightly,
Yeah,
I've played
yeah.
Fantasy Realms now so much that I wouldn't say I've kind of seen everything, but it's still kind of enjoyable. Like for us, I think it's gone from it's not for me. It's not even about what it's a ritual, I guess. It's closer to a ritual than playing, if that makes sense. It's something you do like
Yep.
having your morning coffee.
Yep, yep,
Um,
yep, yep. I can understand what you're saying. And what is your favorite game?
oh gosh, well, that is yeah. I don't know what I would. I mean, probably something like Race for the Galaxy. I think, or I mean, Magic the Gathering has to be there somewhere. It's. I don't really play it anymore, and I'm not really competitive, so that has this kind of like caveat. But yeah, it would be something like Magic or Race for the Galaxy. From the more Euro-y side, like Hansa Teutonica is still, I think, for me, one of the kind of like pinnacles of I think Euro style
Yeah, design.
interactive
Yep,
games.
yep,
That it
yep,
kind of
yep.
particularly nails that kind of indirect interaction.
Uh, I was trying to see. You like these card games, combo cards? Is this a feature in your designs? You look for this when making these your designs?
Uh, I mean, I guess so. I mean, something like Elysium, I think, has come straight
Yeah,
from that desire,
Elysium is, yeah.
definitely, and Monumental as well, I would say, which actually originally was just a card game before some other things got added. But I think actually, interestingly, as I go along more. I find it quite hard to make games of a type that I really enjoy myself because I think I have like I probably not very usefully have sort of higher standards in my own thing because I see these amazing examples and I go like, well, it's not as good as that. Like I make a new card game. It's like, well, that's no Race for the Galaxy, which I mean, it's completely unhelpful because that's
Yeah,
just
you're
stupid.
tripping yourself.
No,
Yeah.
exactly, but it's just a lot harder in a sphere of games which I personally really enjoy and respect, and so I tend to be not I do, I just like I play lots of games. I like designing. I think for me, I like designing lots of different things. So I probably find it a little bit easier outside of, and I guess the only other thing I'd say with I am like I'm working on like a card game right now actually, and I have been for many years, and I think it's because I know those types of games really well and I really enjoy them. I sort of know it has to have something. It has to have even more than what I would need in other prototypes, sort of to know that it's done. And so I tend to just take longer to do it. Yeah.
Tony Boydell says that he works on Polygonia cards right now.
Oh,
Uh,
okay. Yes, yes.
it's
It's a game that is along that line. I think Tony also has a love for Magic and a history in Magic, and I think that was something we really kind of bonded on, and co-designing things like that as well. So, yeah.
so I know Tony Boydell is here. So who's your favorite designer?
Oh, I mean, definitely not Tony Boydell. I mean, he's just, horrible to work with. My favorite design. I mean, that's just. It's also a bit of a tricky question because I guess when you've been in the industry for long
For
enough, and I haven't, I've been
yeah,
lucky enough to meet you.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
hard to like
yeah, yeah,
separate professional and personal.
yeah.
If
I
I
know.
was just going on purely, well, I mean, someone like Bruno Cathala, I think as sort of the combination of the two, I've been lucky enough to, I've designed with him. I've stayed with him a few times at his place, and for me, he's just working on a sort of a different level, really. I would say. sorry, sorry, Tony, that I didn't choose you. Although I have had, but Tony, professionally he's terrible. He has no skills whatsoever. But personally, also horrible to work, to spend time with. But no, I think it's just like I haven't met someone who just the kind of prodigious,
You.
can just kind of see
Mm-hmm,
games.
mm-hmm.
I think there's that kind of crazy story about Five Tribes where he's able to like design games in his head effectively. Like he didn't he the first he thought about Five Tribes over a weekend and he made the first prototype and it was 90% done. And that's just
That's experience. What for
it's
one
just
thing.
crazy. It's not even experience. It's just like I think even like I don't know Reiner Knizia that well, for example, but I don't think even Reiner does something like this. Like he can't. It's just he just has this ability to he just sees it and so that's just very impressive. And I'm trying to think of there is someone else I'm just forgetting now, but oh someone like Vlada Schwadl, who I've never had the chance to meet. But more, I think he's also in that kind of state. But also his ability just to make games that are just completely different, and
Yep.
you know,
Bunny Bunny Moose Moose.
yeah, exactly. And like from
And Tash
Codename
Kalar.
to
And
Mage Knight to
yeah.
Tashkar
Yeah.
to like it's just I understand he's an author. He's written books. It's just like I don't like a polymath kind of thing. I guess which is also kind of like Friedman Fries as well. I think he's a sort of a mad scientist, and really, and to a certain extent, Wolfgang Warsch as well. I think, I still think like the mind is just this incredible thing that, it's like those. I mean, I keep thinking about science, but there are these moments where just discoveries are made, and they sort of just change everything, and you can't really see what led to them. They sort of come out of nowhere, and I think like the mind is something like that. It obviously came from somewhere. It's not, but yeah, there aren't that many games I can point to over the last like 20 years which are just like, wow, this is just, how is this possible, or this sort of thing.
Yeah, all of Warsh's games are quite interesting,
Yeah,
um, and somehow funny. Some of them. Um, and because I work because no, Tony Boydell said something about film. I have a quote from from Orson Welles, which says, "Ignorance. There's no other authority like it." I don't want to be ignorant. This is my first motto in life. So I want to ask you if you want to say something that I might not have asked you about in this part of the interview. Is there something you would want to say and I might have skipped? I might. No.
No, I think the only other thing is that maybe we haven't really talked about it all. And we didn't talk about Elizabeth Hargrave, for example, with Wingspan, and just I think the thing I'm kind of excited about, or I hope that will happen, as we kind of realize that there was a problem that, you only get a certain type of people play. I talked about meeting like a really diverse set of people when I went to university. I think in the design community, there's still a lot of room to make a much more diverse designing community. And when I talk about like games coming out of nowhere, part of the problem of not having many of that is if you have a lot of similar people working on similar things, then you're just going to make more similar things. And I hope we'll get better to be able to promote and support people from other backgrounds to make games and to get them to people. And I think those are going to be, that feels like the really exciting time over the next like 10 years, because we're going to suddenly have, I hope, an influx of games from a bunch of people who we've never heard from before, or that we haven't heard from very much. You saw it with like the Japanese micro games, for example.
Yep.
And now Japanese games are much more, a mainstay in the industry. Yeah. But there's a completely different mindset, and that's just one example. And I hope that I'm just excited to see what can come from that, I guess. And I hope we can keep talking about that and sort of different perspectives. I think like Puerto Rico, for example, you would have seen with great work Jason has done to kind of, to decolonialize that and to have different perspectives. I think
we cannot change history. That's a thing which we shouldn't do, I think. But otherwise, I think this is an inclusive hobby. I think being an industry, being a young industry, I think people are pretty open-minded and are open to new things if they come. I think the most important thing should be that if you are different in which way you are designer, you should just have the courage to come up front with your designs, and if a design is good, somebody will publish it. I think this.
Yes, I mean the only slight thing I'd just add, the caveat to that is that there's obviously systems that sometimes prevent that happening, and it's not to say, and I think it is a very inclusive hobby, but it's just realizing, for example, being a designer means, and we were talking about, for example, reviewing a little bit before this. You have to put in the years.
Yep.
They're the same. You have to put in a lot of years of work where you don't make any money, effectively.
Yep.
But you're expected to work like a professional, or in fact, that's the most. A lot of people want to do it in a professional sense. But of course, that's going to favor the people who just are able to do that. Who have the kind of the circumstance to be able to do that. And I think it's just, it's even things like that. It's not about the hobbiness or having to change about it. It's just being aware of it, I think.
Yep.
To start.
Tony Boydell says that the key thing, the key thing with Puerto Rico is we're not destroying the older editions. Instead, we're offering a progressive edition to go forward with.
Yeah,
which is a fair assessment. So this was the first part of the questionnaire, and now the first part of the interview. Now we are going to end with some questions. I'm going to start with the first question is, what is your favorite the questionnaire comes from the Proust questionnaire, which was then I don't know if you're familiar with the Proust questionnaire. It is there are two questionnaires the first one you should do when you're 13, the other one you should do when you're 21, and they're very good questions. I didn't do it when I was 13 and 21, but somebody else, Bernard Pivot, took from those questionnaires. He created another questionnaire, And James Lipton took it also, and the exact same questionnaire, and used it on Inside Actor Studio. I don't know if you have ever seen that Inside Actor Studio.
I'm afraid no.
I blatantly stole it.
I'll check it out.
I blatantly stole it from there. So, what is your favorite word? This is the first question.
Oh gosh. Oh, that is. I mean, something that came to mind was something like, oh, I mean, it's not really right. I say something like antimony. I mean, it's kind of related to the science thing, but I was always fascinated by the kind of like etymology, I guess,
Yeah.
and I think it's for me because actually and also chemistry has this interesting, or science generally has an interesting way that they have to merge the meanings of words with representations of words, if that makes sense.
Yep,
Because
yep,
you have notation, and of course the periodic table is this wonderful like mix of everything effectively, and there's linguistics and the kind of chemical principles and history as well. And antimony is amazing because it has, for those who don't know, antimony has the symbol SB, or at least in the English periodic table it does. And as I understand it, that comes from actually all the way to Egyptian, actually, because and in Latin it's kind of stibium, because it was part of what they used in eyeshadow. They had antimony compounds in eyeshadow, as I understand it, and stib is related to eye, I believe. So I might be misrepresenting that. Anyway, but it's that kind of story, I guess, behind the word. I mean, that's all of etymology, of course, but that's the one I sort of. There's lots of other really interesting examples, but.
What is your least favorite word?
I mean, that's. I don't know, and it's not exactly the way my mind works, I think. It's the same with games. I think I'd hard to tell you which one I hate the most, for example, or don't like the most. Well, as someone that's learning Czech, I think I don't like most of the Czech language, but that's only because I can't pronounce it mostly, or I get mixed up all the time, I guess. I don't know. I haven't got an answer for you. Sorry. And these were questions meant for when you were 13. I guess when you're 13 and 21, maybe you have a much more like visceral feeling. Probably some sort of swear word. I mean, I won't say it on the thing, but it's just swearing's all a bit like, I don't know, it just lacks creativity, maybe.
Oh, you can be so creative swearing.
No, I mean, well, but of course, but then, I mean, I guess the more common sort of expletives maybe is a better point, Yeah, no, I think you could be, no, I mean, for example, Shakespeare showed something like that, how creative you can be with swearing, but I mean, the more kind of, just, like, I mean, I guess because they're sort of almost devoid of meaning now, they're just sort of, just like part, I don't know how to say it, it's like onomatopoeic, it's just part of like movement, and I don't know, that's not a very you can tell I'm a scientist, I can't do the humanities side, but it's like
okay.
It's like not a
okay,
tick,
I let you struggle enough. Okay.
Thank you. I'm done.
What turns you on creatively or emotionally or spiritually?
Probably novelty, I think. It's that moment where you realize something that was kind of always there, and you sort of see how it works, or you see how it could work. That like something in your mind kind of like turns over, and you see something in a different way, and maybe it was the way that it was always intended to be seen, but you just couldn't see it. It can be in works of fiction where you suddenly, it's the twist, and you're just like, oh, it was suddenly all this all along. It can be in a game when you're working on something and then suddenly it starts working, you see actually what the game really is. Because I think when you're working on a game early on, you're not like you're not a mechanist, or you're not an engineer. You're not like building something to do a job. You're more like an archaeologist who's like, just like searching through the dirt to find something useful. And then you try and work out what it was, sort of thing. so it's those moments, and with language the same. It's like the moment you realize, oh, that's where it all comes from, or that word. I mean, I think again, learning a different language, you sort of forget there's a lot of things in your own language that have this kind of hidden meaning or logic that you just don't think about because you don't think about your own language in that kind of analytical way. But when you're learning another language, you see that, and that kind of makes you reflect on your own. At those moments where you do reflect on your own, that's the kind of thing that really
turns you on. And what turns you off?
Small talk, I think. I hate I hate what's the word, like the opposite of being genuine.
Just doing conversation for the conversation's sake.
Yeah, exactly. Life's too short. I think it's something about being Australian, or people say that we're quite upfront and pretty genuine.
And now I think you're gonna like this one. What is your favorite curse word?
It's quite funny because I mean, maybe my favorite it's in Czech, and it's very simple. Ježiš Maria. It's like Jesus, Mary, and Jesus, Mary, but only because it has this connection to my fiance's grandmother. Just uses it all the time, and it's like she doesn't speak any English, so it's not exactly how we communicate, but she knows I now I can imitate her quite well in this particular part, and she even finds it quite funny. So it's this sort of like, I don't know, it's just, yeah, I sort of enjoy that. It's not particularly bad. I think it's like, it's fine saying it in even polite conversation. It's not that bad, but yeah.
Yeah. What sound or noise do you love?
Probably rain on a roof or something like that, I think. Probably something like an Australian. I wonder if Australians probably can enjoy rain in that because it doesn't last all the time, and it's often quite welcome. And so I think, and it's kind of, if like in England, for example, if it happens all the time, then you probably have a very different kind of experience of it. But for me, like I always found like rain on a roof kind of very relaxing. It's the time where you can kind of switch off and go inside and do something. Yeah.
And what noise or sound, or what sound or noise do you hate?
Well, construction probably at the moment, but I only say that because around my house throughout pretty much all through the pandemic and even now they're allowed to start construction at like 7 a.m. every morning, even through the weekends, which I think is crazy. So yeah, probably the sound of a jackhammer.
Which profession outside the one you already do would you like to attempt?
That's a good question. Well, I'll exclude science and because it's not my profession anymore, but I've kind of already done that. I think I would be interested in something in government. I don't have a very good sense of it, but I guess I would like to understand a little bit more on like how things on that level work, I guess, or how things can change. I mean, I guess they can change through like revolution, but I'm sort of interested in if they can change in a, I guess I'd just like to understand manner. Well, I'd like to understand a bit more about how that system works, I guess. And the conclusion from it might be that, yeah, it's just horrendously broken and it doesn't work and you need something else. But
exactly.
I think until you're actually in it, it's just such a different world. I mean, just like everything, right? Like when you're working in it, it's different to looking from the outside. And games are the same, when you see the inside workings of a publisher, it's very different to, working, just playing a game. But yeah, I guess it feels very urgent to me to kind of understand that. And so I guess the best way is to learn by doing.
Judging by how you dodged some questions, you want to be a politician.
Well, no, I don't think I want to be a politician. I think politicians are mostly idiots. But there are some very good people who work as bureaucrats. I think that I feel like when I've seen some things really work really well, it's because, it's the same in a lab, for example, in a research lab. It often wasn't necessarily the professor, although I should say the professor who was in charge of me was incredible. But it's often the people just like a little bit below that. It's like the kind of the managers. I guess I'm kind of interested in management. Is probably the other point. It's how do you, yeah, how do you work with people? How do you, especially how do you get groups of people to work together towards something,
and make it
and
efficiently.
how do you,
Make it efficient, yeah. Make it work.
yeah, I mean, it can be about efficiency, but it can also be about getting the most out of like a diverse set of people. It's not always about getting everyone to work as hard as you can. I think it's like about working out what works, and
Yeah.
there's not one solution that fits everything.
What profession, outside the one you already do, would you not to attempt? Would you not like to attempt? Sorry.
Or would I not like to
Yep.
attempt? Well, anything particularly dangerous, I would say. So I guess, rodeo, like a rodeo clown or something, or yeah, I mean, I'm not one for like thrills and spills or anything. So being like I don't know, like a rock climber, like, on huge rock faces or something, but I don't know how much of it. Yeah, it's a very small profession, I guess. Probably lawyer as well, just because I think it from the people I know in it, it either goes between just completely soul destroying to completely inane and sort of boring, and I don't see where the good part is in all of that. But yeah, maybe something like that. That's quite a simplistic view. Sorry to my lawyer friends.
And my last question is, if heaven exists, what would you expect God to say to you when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Oh, well, I hope welcome, I guess, would be just simply would be welcome. Yeah.
Well, on that bombshell, um, I would like to finish the interview here, and I want to thank you for coming to Booghy Plays and for doing this interview. It was very nice talking to you. It felt good. It felt I had a good time. I hope you felt good here on my virtual game room in this virtual comfy chairs.
No, it was very nice. Thank you. No, it was definitely some more curveball questions that I've ever had on. I'll have to look up this Proust interview thing now, but no, it was a lot of fun. No, thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here, and I will meet Ines and maybe.
Yeah, I will be there.
I will do an outro. Please don't. I'll do it alone. Please don't. We'll be talking shortly. Thank you again, and I will just say I want to say thank you to everyone who watched live, and if you like what you see, please like, share, and subscribe, because it keeps the internet alive. Also, it will tell you when something happens here. I want to thank everyone who will come and watch after the fact. And until next time, thank you, Tony Boydell, for coming. it was well unexpected for my small Romanian channel, which tries to go a bit more international. And until next time, all I can all I can say to you is, like it says here, which in Romanian says, play a lot, play loads, as you Brits say, have fun, and until next time, bye bye world, wherever you are.